Gwen, let's go to Gwen from Waco. Would you repeat your question?
Uh, yes, sir. Congressman Flores. My question is about climate change and what evidence you have that climate change is not man-made, since 95% of climate scientists say that it is predominantly man-made. And so people have to be the ones to respond to it in order to solve it. And how do you feel about our response through international, through joining with all other nations who, in a great majority of them, have signed the climate accord?
Okay. Thank you, Gwen. Let me say this. First of all, I think one of the precepts that you put in your question is that I don't support dealing with climate change. Let me say this. I do support dealing with climate change. I recognize that climate change is happening. It's been happening for hundreds of years. You did make a statement of saying that 95% of scientists think that climate change is predominantly caused by man. That's actually not correct. That statement, which has been widely circulated, turns out to be false. We will actually find the study that shows how scientists fall on this, and it's actually about half that number. And also, what the original report said, 93% of scientists believe that man causes climate change, but it did say predominant is the predominant cause of climate change. But so that said, I don't want to argue over nickels with you over nickels on this. But let's look sort of long term. Let's look at how do we address this. I think that we need to look at it. It took us 150 years to get into this situation. I think we need to have a moonshot approach over the next 50 years or so that moves us from a carbon-based energy source to a low-carbon future. And there are things that we can do that. We can invest in basic research to find the fuels or the energy sources of the future. We can look at nuclear fuel. It's the ultimate green fuel if you think about it, because it produces zero emissions. It's always on. It doesn't kill birds. It doesn't put shade over the desert like solar does. So we need to look at those types of solutions to deal with this and do it over the long term, and let people make the choices about how to move forward. I'll give you a perfect example. I'm the largest producer of residential solar power in Brazos County. And I did it because I could afford to. I'm sort of a geek about stuff like that. The bulk of my house is lit with LED bulbs. But I did that because I'm an early adopter. And those of us that early adopt create the environment where prices come down and more people can do those types of things. But we do it from our own free will. We do it from choice. We do it not because we're compelled to by the federal government. Now, one of the things where I think you think I'm fighting against efforts to combat climate change is some of the things where we've done to roll back regulations from the Obama administration. Let's walk through that. When the EPA was created back in the 70s, we had a clean air and a clean water problem. And over the last of the time that the EPA has been in existence, we have reduced emissions by about 70%. Our population has more than doubled, and our economy is up by about 200 and some odd percent. So we know we can couple these things together. Today's tailpipe from emissions from cars are 1% of what they were before we had emissions control. So we're on the right track. If we did nothing today, if we stopped all new regulations from an environmental perspective, we would still see the air get cleaner, the water get cleaner. And why is that? It's because every time somebody replaces an old car and buys a new car, it's a cleaner car. The plants, as plants go through changes, They have to upgrade to the latest technology to fit the latest regulations, and so they're cleaner. We're finding ways to do everything more efficiently moving forward, so it gets cleaner. Now, what the Obama administration was trying to do are two things: is go for the last little percent of perfect, and that's where your costs explode. And the most egregious thing that they did on the environmental front is they locked up the science. So they would go to either an educational institution or to a consulting company, and they would say, we want you to do this study because we've got this ideological outcome that we want to achieve. They basically tell the person providing the study, this is the answer we want you to get to, and then say, by the way, you've got to keep all this secret. You can't share it. So they'd lock these up in a confidentiality provision or non-disclosure provision. We've learned that this happened because we saw some of these things get leaked. And so here you are as a taxpayer, you're not getting to see what you paid for in terms of a government study that was used to produce a regulation that's going to have a dramatic impact on you and all your neighbors in Central Texas and across this country. That's not right. The next thing the Obama administration did is they pencil whipped the numbers in their economic analyses to try to make the cost-benefit analyses look better than they are. We should never do that. We need to have an open and transparent government with the EPA. The air's going to get cleaner and the water's going to get cleaner, even if we did nothing. That said, I think we should do something. We should have this 50-year moonshot approach to deal with trying to move from a carbon-based economy to a low carbon-based energy economy. Please press *3 to get in.